The movie opens with a character named Casey Bowman. He lives in a martial arts facility in Japan. Taita Sensei is the boss there. Casey aspires to be a master of Budo, which is similar to being extremely tough and disciplined. He works really hard, and Taita Sensei and his daughter, Namiko, grow to like him. One day, when Casey is training with Namiko, Taita Sensei appears and offers some guidance. He explains that in martial arts, it is critical to remain cool and composed when fighting. Later that night, Taita Sensei opens a mysterious box, revealing an antique ninja costume and weapon called Yoibitsu. It has been in their family for quite some time. Taita Sensei gathers all of the students and announces that Casey and another student named Masazuka are the best in class. However, Masazuka dislikes being compared to Casey. He thinks he's better and dislikes Casey because Casey and Namiko are good friends. The next day, Taita Sensei arranges a bout between Casey and Masazuka. Masazuka dislikes Casey and immediately attacks him, being quite cruel. Taita Sensei tries to stop him, but Masazuka is too angry to listen. He continues to hurt Casey and even tries to stab him with his katana, a large blade. But Casey defends himself and injures Masazuka under the eye. Taita Sensei must expel Masazuka from the dojo since he did something really wrong. Masazuka is furious about this and threatens to retaliate against everyone in the dojo. He is quite upset. A long time later, at the Temple Industries factory in New York City, there is a hidden group known as the Rain that holds a grand welcome ceremony for new members. Now, over in Russia, there are two prominent business leaders who are having a major problem with the Rain. They must be taken care of, and Masazuka, the ninja assassin, has been assigned to do it. After a few days, Taita Sensei gathers all of his students at the Koba dojo that he runs. He wants to show them something special called Yoibitsu, which he has had for 30 years as the Grandmaster. Then, unexpectedly, Masazuka appears and declares himself the new Grandmaster of the Koba dojo. But Taita Sensei says no way. Masazuka even threatens that they will be sorry for not promoting him to Grandmaster. Taita Sensei suspects Masazuka would strike, so he begs Casey and Namiko to defend Yoibitsu. He trusts Casey because he is a wonderful person, and he wants him to look after his daughter and that particular thing, Yoibitsu. To summarize, Casey and Namiko took Yoibitsu to New York. They kept it secure in a vault at Trio University with the assistance of Taita Sensei's buddy, Professor Garrison. Now back in Japan, Masazuka has gone insane and attacked the dojo. He killed everyone there, including his own teacher, Taita Sensei. Namiko attempted to phone her father but received no answer. Masazuka heard the phone ring as he was leaving the dojo and realized it was Professor Garrison calling. So Masazuka contacted the Rain to find out where Professor Garrison was. In the meantime, Casey was looking for his mother in New York. He went to her last known address and discovered that she had died a few months before from a stroke. He returned to Professor Garrison's residence and informed Namiko of the situation. At the same time, Masazuka figured out where they were and dispatched his companions to pursue them. Masazuka not only targeted Casey and Namiko, but also Professor Garrison and his family. Unfortunately, his henchmen killed them all. Casey and Namiko narrowly fled and sought safety in an inn. They received a huge shock while watching television. According to the news, they were responsible for the murder of Professor Garrison and his family, and the police were now hunting them. Then the Rain's evil guys assaulted them again, this time aboard a crowded train. It was wild. After eventually escaping Masazuka's minions and exiting the train, cops appeared out of nowhere and detained Casey and Namiko. Masazuka slipped inside the police station that night, posing as Namiko's lawyer and turning off the lights. He injured some police officers in the dark before seizing Namiko. In the midst of the pandemonium, Casey prevented one of the cops from being killed by Masazuka. But Masazuka seized Namiko and repeatedly asked her to reveal information about Yoibitsu. He even told her that he murdered his own father and everyone in the dojo because he believed they had betrayed him. So Casey learned about Masazuka from one of the people who had attacked him earlier. He decided to visit Temple Industries and obtain Masazuka's phone number from the major boss, Mr. Temple. Casey called Masazuka and offered him Yoibitsu in exchange for Namiko's protection. Casey dashed over to the campus to retrieve the chest, put on a ninja suit, and take some weapons. Meanwhile, Masazuka went to the location they agreed upon. When he arrived, he observed the chest containing Yoibitsu being lowered by crane. He let Namiko free and proceeded to the chest, which was empty. Just then, Casey arrived, dressed in Yoibitsu. They were going to have a major showdown. At the same time, the Rain members appeared and attacked everyone. Masazuka easily thrashed Mr. Temple on orders, while Casey and Namiko attempted to flee Mr. Temple and his gang's onslaught. After defeating all of the terrible guys from the Rain, Masazuka did something sneaky. He used a blowpipe to fire a poisoned arrow at Namiko and taunted Casey by dangling the antidote bottle. They got into a heated brawl, and Masazuka accidentally dropped the antidote bottle. Casey became quite angry. While they were fighting, the NYPD helicopter put its lights on them. Masazuka utilized a ninja move to blind Casey with his sword's reflection before vanishing right in front of him. To defend himself, Casey closed his eyes and fought instinctively. He stabbed Masazuka in the back, and that ended his life. Casey was quite sad since he couldn't save Namiko. Then he remembered what his ninja sensei had taught him about the katana's ability to injure and heal. He discovered the antidote inside Masazuka's katana handle and used it to save Namiko. It worked really quickly, and she was well. Before leaving, Casey cut off Masazuka's head. The next day, a police officer gave Casey and Namiko good news. They were no longer accused of harming Professor Garrison or his family. Even better, the cops apprehended Mr. Temple and eliminated the Rain once and for all. The police returned their passports and ordered them to leave New York. So Casey and Namiko returned to Japan. They wanted to bid goodbye to their late master while also continuing to run the Koba dojo. Of course, they kept a tight eye on Nuibitsu. The next scene shows Casey Bowman in a jewelry store. He's purchasing a necklace as a surprise gift for his wife, Namiko. Casey had no idea that two crooks were observing him and preparing to steal his belongings. But Casey had no issue taking care of those guys and returned home. When he returned home, he gave the necklace to Namiko, who was expecting their first child. She appeared overjoyed with the present. Later that night, Namiko expressed a need for chocolate and asked Casey to acquire it for her. As a nice husband, Casey went to the supermarket to get some. But as he was going to pay, he noticed his wallet was missing. He hurried back home. At the same moment, someone broke into their home and was preparing to harm Namiko. When Casey returned home, he discovered that his wife had been murdered and there was a mark on her neck from a barbed wire gun. On the day of the funeral, Casey's best buddy, Nabura, a student of Taita Sensei, came to see him. Nabura was deeply remorseful for what happened to Namiko. He offered Casey the opportunity to learn in his dojo in Thailand to help him cope with the agony of losing his wife. But Casey declined because he wanted to discover the guy who killed his wife and get retribution. He suspected the criminals he fought after purchasing the necklace were connected to her murder. So Casey visited a dojo to see if he might find any leads. At the dojo, he got into a fight with some of the other trainees. After a big brawl, Casey figured out where the two robbers were and followed them. He apprehended them in a dark alley and brought them away, but he learned nothing about his wife's murder. That's when he decided to take Nabura's counsel and travel to Thailand. When Casey arrived at Nob's dojo in Thailand, Met Kabura greeted him enthusiastically and introduced him to all of the students. Casey planned to stay there for long as he proceeded to investigate Namiko's murder and find the perpetrator. One day, while sparring with Lucas, one of Nob's students, Casey lost his temper and began attacking him with a bakken, a wooden blade. Nob advised Casey to keep his emotions in check and suggested him undertake firewalking training, but Casey was unable to complete it since he could not forget Namiko. Feeling restless, he went to a local bar and got into a fight with some inebriated males. Casey didn't feel well the next day as a result of the previous night's drinking. He was about to go pick some fruit in the garden when Lucas, being thoughtful, stepped in and volunteered to do it for him. Casey thanked Lucas and returned to his room, but he was unable to sleep peacefully. It felt like his instincts were warning him of something horrible, and regrettably, they were correct. Casey learned that Lucas had been found dead in the garden, precisely as Namiko had been killed, with that barbed wire weapon. Casey discussed it with Nob, who recognized the barbed wire weapon as Goro's work. Nob then shared a story with Casey. He told him that the top students of the Koka dojo were Casey's father, Taita Sensei, and a man named Isamu. When Taita died, Isamu battled her for control of the dojo. Taita won the fight and became grandmaster. Isamu's younger brother Goro witnessed the entire incident and promised to exact retribution for his brother's death, even if it took 3 generations. Goro is now the top leader of a narcotics organization in Myanmar. Nob advised Casey to return to the United States because Taita's son-in-law was a potential target for Goro. But Casey had different intentions. He urged Nob to assist him in locating Goro, because the man was hiding in Myanmar, and even the local authorities were afraid of him. Nab offered Casey a World War II-era map of Burma. It featured a mark that indicated where ninja weapons were buried. After thanking Nob, Casey proceeded to Myanmar. He met a kind taxi driver named Mike, who drove him to an inn. Casey prepared with all of his ninja gear and some poison. That night, with Mike's help, Casey discovered a bar frequented by drug dealers. While he was drinking alone, a man approached him and offered him something. Casey wanted to know more about Goro, so he followed him. When they arrived at a peaceful location, Casey mentioned Goro's name, and the man became suspicious and summoned his companions. They tried to team up on Casey, but he was able to defeat them all and obtain the information he needed on Goro. Afterward, Casey returned to his hotel, but the cops, who were working with Goro, barged into his room. They intended to arrest him, believing he was an American agent. Casey attempted to flee, but there were too many cops, all of whom carried firearms. He couldn't flee, so they took him to jail. In prison, he was mistreated and tortured in various ways. However, Casey decided to pretend to be asleep in order to get the police to stop assaulting him. As they were going to place him in a cell, he awoke, attacked the police officers, and stole their clothes. Casey attempted to get out of prison while masquerading as a cop. Before departing, he learned where Goro was hiding from one of the officers. The cop stated that Goro was in the middle of a forest. When he got out of prison, Casey approached Mike for help again. Mike led him to the forest, where Goro was hiding. Goro's men were already patrolling the area, anticipating Casey's arrival. Casey fought with them and defeated them all, taking their weapons in the process. As Casey moved deeper into the woodland, he came across the graves of the Japanese troops that Nob had mentioned. He armed himself with a box containing ninja weapons concealed beneath a wooden gravestone bearing the Nob clan insignia. With everything ready, Casey continued on his trek, finally arriving at Goro's underground hideout. He crept inside Goro's headquarters and silently eliminated Goro's soldiers one by one. After they were dealt with, Casey rigged the place to explode before confronting Goro's top bodyguard and right-hand man, Matat. Casey and Matat engaged in a violent combat. Despite being overwhelmed by Matat, Casey was eventually able to murder him by slashing his heart and snapping his neck. Casey then proceeded to Goro's base and attacked the old man. Casey slashed Goro's stomach, but the man managed to stand up. Goro placed barbed wire around Casey's neck during the struggle, but Casey used all of his might to break free, defend himself, and then throw Goro to the ground before decapitating him. In a nutshell, Casey accomplished his revenge and returned to Nob's dojo. Nob was ecstatic to have Casey back. While they were talking, a delivery man approached Nob. Casey saw that the symbol on the delivery guy's knife was identical to the one used by the thieves in Japan, which led him to the conclusion that Nob was responsible for Namiko and Lucas's deaths. It turns out that Nob was a drug dealer all along, and he employed Casey to bring down the Goro gang in order to gain control of the Southeast Asian drug trade. Nob offered Casey a choice, join him or perish. But Casey didn't want to work with the people who killed Namiko, so they had a nasty fight. Casey kicked Nob through a wall, revealing a room full with ancient artifacts. They continued to battle, this time with guns. Casey sliced Nob in the midsection, and Nob stabbed his left shoulder with his wakizashi. Then, Nob attempted to attack Casey, but Casey seized the barbed wire and strangled him to death. After Nob left, Casey informed Hiroshi, one of the dojo's students, about Nob's true intentions. Hiroshi discovered a package for Nob that turned out to be packed of drugs. Knowing that this would harm the dojo's reputation, Hiroshi chose to behave as if nothing had happened and thanked Casey for disclosing everything. With his revenge complete, Casey returned to Japan and dropped Namiko's locket into a pool, providing some closure to his loss. So the lesson of the story is this: in the world of martial arts and revenge, always double-check the symbol on a delivery guy's knife before entrusting them with your secrets.